Well, the 49ers keep on making signings. I obviously flew to Vegas today, bumpy landing as it normally is here in the desert. It's also 109 degrees, and the 49ers won't give me a break. Damone Harris and William Bradley King have signed with San Francisco. This is from Harris's Instagram. That confirms the signing. We'll find out who exactly the 49ers will cut probably tomorrow before they take on the Raiders in this joint practice. But what is absolutely wild is that at this moment, because we don't know of the cuts yet, this moment we could say that the 49ers have 22 defensive linemen on their roster. I'm assuming that at least one of the maneuvers to make room for Harris and for Bradley King is going to be cutting a defensive lineman, but that's just an assumption. That's not a fact. There's a chance they're going to officially have 22 defensive linemen on their roster, and the least that they'll have after these moves is 20. Even if it's just 20, that is by far the most defensive linemen that the 49ers, I think, have ever had on their team. It's definitely the most that they've had since I've been covering San Francisco. If you want to see what this looks like in roster form, it really is quite staggering. I'm going to zoom in on the defensive line, and then I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to slide from left to right on the spreadsheet because it is such a prodigious sight. Okay, so you can see here, defensive end to defensive end with the two tackle spots in between. Here's column 1. Here's column 2. Each column's got 4 names. Here's column 3. Here's column 4. Here's column 5. So that's 5 times 4 equals 20. And then you go down to injured reserve. Teron Jackson is a defensive end, and the 49ers just put Bradley Anayi on this injured reserve list. He's also a defensive end. So he's technically still with the team, and that makes up 22 defensive linemen. Like every single cell is filled to the brim right now. I could only fit 20 here, and because they've got more defensive ends than defensive tackles, I had to put Damone Harris as a defensive tackle for San Francisco. So they are absolutely loaded. I call it the wild 49ers D-line experiment because we've seen since the start of this offseason what the 49ers are trying to do. They're trying to get younger. They're trying to get hungrier. They're also trying to get healthier. That's not working so far along the defensive line, but it's still training camp right now. If we want to talk about health, every single player that's hurt is currently shaded in pink here. So one of the big reasons why they have 22 of these guys on the roster is because 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then 7 and 8 on injured reserve. 8 defensive linemen are currently hurt. That's what's made this a necessity to sign so many guys. But on top of that, they entered this offseason with this intense focus on fostering as much competition as humanly possible. You had your veteran pillar in Nick Bosa. That was obviously going to be the A-list foundational core of the defensive line. You paid him a couple years ago, but then you were just going to pipe in young talent around Nick Bosa. That was the plan, to get younger. That was the plan, to get hungrier. Obviously, you're going to get cheaper because you're in salary cap trouble if you're the 49ers. But to be honest, last year they were bad. Last year, they finished ranked number 29 in run defense. The defense was the second worst in the league over the course of the past last 2 games of the season. We saw them getting blown off the ball, defensive tackle especially, and then the linebackers couldn't flow to the football against the run. They had to renovate this unit, and it makes me wonder, are more renovations still coming? Like you're saying, oh, well, they've done a lot of renovations. They got 22 of these guys on the roster. Sure, but when I made my 53-man roster projection today, you could see here, I double star a player who I think is a candidate to be traded. I think that somebody like Jordan Elliott, veteran defensive tackle, he might be dealt in 2 weeks, right at the roster cut down, or at some point in this 2025 season to open the way for some of these younger guys, notably the Hulk, Sebastian Valdez. If there's one of these players right now that is knocking on the door of, I need to be in on the 53-man roster projection, and there may not quite be room for me with the way that things are set up right now, it is Sebastian Valdez, who they're calling the Hulk. Nick Seagull might have coined the nickname for him, although Valdez wasn't sure. I guess everybody calls him that in the 49ers building now. But he's somebody who is rapidly rising up the ranks. And Robert Saleh said, now we're going to get to see him play more against some ones and against some twos. He already had good opportunities against the twos, and I thought he looked pretty good last week. There was even some opportunities against the ones, but I think that as this gets closer to August 26th, somebody like Sebastian Valdez is going to get more and more of a chance against the best players on the other team. And I think that if the 49ers run a dress rehearsal week 3 against the Chargers, you would hope that the Chargers run a dress rehearsal on their end and they run plenty of their starters, so the 49ers can give this young defensive line experiment as much runway as is humanly possible to go try stuff out, to go see if they're worthy of a 53-man roster spot. Here you could see my 53-man roster projection. We're the first to come out with one today. I think it's already being copied across YouTube. But the 53-man roster projection 1.0, I talk about 2 possible trades at the cutdown for the 49ers. I talk about Jordan Elliott, and I talk about Jair Brown, who might be becoming redundant in that safety room, redundant and also not handpicked by the 49ers' current defensive staff. It's a Steve Wilkes guy. Robert Saleh's bringing in his own guys, trait-based safeties. Marquise Seagull getting those first-team reps at 49ers practice. So what we're seeing is a wild training camp at all levels of this defense, building this around Bosa, building this around Warner, building this around Lenore. And the Bosa part especially is, to me, fascinating because of the 22 bodies the 49ers have in that defensive line room as we speak. If you want to take another look at it, my proposed rotation right now, if there were a game tomorrow, would feature, and everybody were healthy. That's a problem. Givens won't be, so we're not going to include him. But the minor injuries, he'd probably have Jordan Elliott as a starter. But if he's going to be a lower level starter and you think that you can reach a higher ceiling by the end of the season with guys like CJ West and Alfred Collins and Sebastian Valdez developing, and you want to give them more opportunities to develop, so you sacrifice a lower floor now for a potential higher ceiling later, well, then Elliott is a definite trade candidate for the 49ers. That's just the way that I'm looking at this, because I already saw them jettison Malik Collins and Javon Hargrave to fit CJ West and Alfred Collins. Does somebody have to go to fit Sebastian Valdez? Maybe it's Jordan Elliott. Evan Anderson, I think, has gotten in really good shape. His body looks different than last year. He's trimmed some of that fat. He looks stronger. They wanted him to be able to move a little bit quicker. They wanted more stamina for Evan Anderson. He's back at practice now after the minor injury, so he's back. He's one of the young guys in the mix that's going to put pressure on somebody like Jordan Elliott. I mean, it is fascinating stuff. And it is, it's kind of like the Hunger Games right now for the 49ers. It's a very cutthroat competition amongst players who aren't exactly established in the NFL. So the 53-man roster is much more unpredictable than it has been in any season since maybe Shanahan's first in 2017. We weren't sure about Kalia Davis entering this training camp because we didn't know what he was going to show coming off this longest healthy stretch that he's had in his career. We knew that he was really good up until he hurt himself against Tennessee last year in week 1 of the preseason. And I thought that even though he played 13 games, I didn't think that Kalia Davis was great last year, but he never really had a chance to truly get it going. He's had that chance this offseason, and he showed up and he was one of the 49ers stars against the Denver Broncos to open the preseason. So Kalia Davis, I think, because he's got experience, because he's been through the fire, because he flashed in a very certain way on Saturday, he's at the top of the heap. Also because Kevin Givens is going to start this season on an IR list. They'll probably stash him. They'll probably carry him on the initial 53 and then transfer him over to injured reserve on the second day so that he's eligible to return after 4 games. But it may take about half the season for Kevin Givens dealing with the pectoral injury. I don't know that. Don't quote me on that. I'm just saying that the 49ers are anticipating that that's going to be a longer-term deal. Fascinating stuff. Kyle Shanahan came on Sirius XM radio a little bit earlier today and discussed this 49ers season and the build that's going to have to happen in the context of the roster. He listen to this, because Kyle Shanahan said that there's some similarities to the early days, 17 and 18, minus the fact that they've got the A-list core already in place. I thought that this was a fantastic look at where the 49ers are currently at from Shanahan himself.
When we got here in 17, we knew we had a roster that we really had to completely change over. And, in the first year, we changed 10 out of 11 guys on offense. Joe Staley was the only one who remained. And on defense, we did 8 out of 11. So we had a big turnover, and we did it all with we did it all with draft picks. And to me, you don't hit on every draft pick, but we hit on a lot, and we got some difference makers in there, and that kind of became the core of our group from 19 all the way till now. And we brought in a couple different people with Christian and Trent that we did through trades, but everyone else has kind of been homegrown and through the draft. And fortunately, we've been able to keep some of those guys, and that's to me the biggest difference between now and 17 is that some of these guys that have been here are still here, and we got a group of players, whether it's 5, whether it's 7, whatever it is, that are different makers, some borderline Hall of Fame players too. But when you look at the rest of the roster, that's what reminds me a little bit more of 17 and 18, that we need to add a bunch of youth. We need to get guys who are younger, so obviously we can afford to keep some of these players, also having to pay a quarterback and things like that. So whenever that happens, you do depend on young guys. But when you get young guys, it also makes it a little bit more built to last. And we're kind of in the in-between in those areas, because when you got guys like Christian, guys like Trent, Bosa, Fred, there's a number of them. It's hard to kind of say that you're rebuilding, because you got guys there who can carry you. But in the NFL, it doesn't matter how good those stars are. You got to have the right type of team. And we know we got some young guys that haven't done it yet. But that's what's so big about this year. It's what's so big about camp is we're finding out a lot about these guys every day. And it'll be interesting who ends up being a part of our 53, which to me is more open now than it's been in about 6 years. But even on day one, that's not going to be it. Like week 1, I expect our team in week 12, week 13 to look a lot different than it did in week 1. And my whole goal is that we get better throughout the year and find a way to hopefully get into those playoffs. And once you get into those playoffs, then you got a chance at anything.
So credit to Sirius XM there. Kyle Shanahan, you heard him. He said, I think this is the most open the 53-man has been in 6 years. So you do the math, that's 2018, 2019, right around then. 2019, it was actually remarkably open. And I think that 49ers fans will say, well, if you say 2018, they went 4-12 that year. Sure, extenuating circumstances, right? The quarterback tore his ACL in week 3 at Kansas City in 2018. 2019, though, there was a lot of competition heading into that year. It was a young team, and the 49ers ended up going 13-3 and all the way to the Super Bowl. They're NFC champions in 2019. That year hit like a shot of and just an injection of adrenaline, right, in 2019, because they finally had enough A-list pillars combined with enough quality youth, hungry quality youth, to take the league by storm and take the league by surprise, really, in 2019. They were not favored to win the division. The Rams were favored to win the division entering that season. This time, I'm in Vegas right now, so you could talk about the odds, and the 49ers are favored to win the NFC West. And I think that they're going to become stronger favorites the longer that Matthew Stafford's back is keeping him out of practice. That being said, the Rams will remain dangerous. We know that Jimmy Garoppolo can win games, and we know that the Rams have developed their defense, and we know that the 49ers are modeling a lot of the defensive build that Kyle Shanahan talked about after what the Rams have done over the past 2 years. When I talk about a wild D-line experiment, and I talk about 22 defensive linemen currently on the 49ers roster, and I talk about the fact that the Rams entered training camp last year with 36 rookies on the roster, way more than the 49ers this year. We're talking new age, pump the roster full of youth, NFL strategies for both of these teams. But where I see a delineation between what the Rams did in the past 2 seasons and what the 49ers are doing this year, it's in the fact that the 49ers still have their Aaron Donald. Donald retired in LA. Nick Bosa is far from retiring in San Francisco, right? The 49ers still have their Fred Warner. The Rams defense didn't have a player like that to shepherd it along. 49ers still have their Diamador Lenore. And, maybe they'll have some other pillars that emerge out of this season. Maybe somebody like Malik Mustafa. He was already heading on that track last year, but maybe somebody like Marquise Seagull or somebody like Jason Pinnock, somebody like D. Winters. Maybe they emerge into players that are not necessarily A-listers, but Robin to the Batman on the team, right? Dre Greenlaw was a Robin on the 49ers, and he was very, very effective, and he was a veteran leader who helped make sure that 49ers defense, whenever he was playing, was one of the best units in the league. Even last year, right? Whenever Dre was out there for his 35 snaps or so, the 49ers were a whole lot better than they were without him. The Rams, in their entire defensive rehaul, they have not had this kind of star veteran leadership. And that's why the 49ers, and you just heard it from Kyle Shanahan, think that this 2025 season is different than 2017 and 2018 because they're not building from scratch. They're rebuilding the very, very important meat of the roster, but the foundational pillars are already there. And you need both, right? You need speed, youth, hunger. You need that in droves because football rosters are big, but you also need those crown jewels, right? You absolutely have to have the star players at every single position to be a true contender in the NFL. Like the best teams have star players up and down their roster. It's just how it is. It's not just one quarterback leading a team to a Super Bowl. And the dynastic years for the 49ers, it was never just Joe Montana. They also had, especially in 81, they had a really good young defense. He threw it to Dwight Clark. He had Freddie Solomon on that football team, and that wasn't the best 49ers team either. You went to 84 and then especially to the 88 and 89 seasons where they also won Super Bowls. And in 88 and 89, you had Jerry Rice as part of those teams. And those were essentially all-star teams. If we want to talk about that, then we could talk about the 1994 49ers who had a bunch of future Hall of Famers, all-pros, and Pro Bowlers on the field. So you're trying to make it as strong as possible while simultaneously being as young and hungry as possible. If you don't have the right formula, you could end up like the 2011 Eagles, who had all this hype entering the season, but just completely flamed out. Or this hits closer to home, you can end up like the 2024 49ers, who were just trying to hang on, and they had a great top-heavy roster, but then everybody got hurt because they were exhausted from the runs in the years prior, and it ended up exposing the roster. You know, sometimes the season doesn't work out. That's what happened in 2024, and they said, hey, we've got to renovate this. We have to go wild with this defensive line experiment. We love Nick Bosa. Let's build it around him. Let's see what we can do in that regard. And that's where San Francisco is right now. So please do check out the article, which I have up on the San Francisco Standard in terms of the 53-man roster projection. It is here. The 49ers have signed 2 new defensive linemen. It's Will Bradley King and Damone Harris. Will Bradley King started with Washington. He was a 7th-round pick in 2021. Then he went to New England and was with them in 2023 and 2024, but he was just an offseason / practice squad member in those 2 years. Then there was Damone Harris. He also joins the 49ers. He was an undrafted free agent out of Buffalo, the Buffalo Bulls, I believe. And he was with Tampa Bay in 2018 and 2019. Then to Baltimore, then to Kansas City, where he won a Super Bowl against the 49ers in 2019, then to Houston, and most recently with Atlanta. Both of these new defensive ends are about 265 pounds, so they both are cut from the cloth of the stronger run-stopping defensive end. If we want to look in detail at what type of linemen the 49ers have around Nick Bosa, we can go through this player by player. I think this is actually a really good exercise to explain the strategy of what the 49ers are doing up front. Bosa is a 260 to 270 guy, right? So he can set an edge against the run. Mykel Williams is a 260 to 270 guy, so he can set an edge against the run. Yetur Gross-Matos, expect him finally back, I think, next week. He's another 260 to 270 guy. He can set a firm edge against the run. 3-down player. Then you move to Bryce Huff. This guy weighs 250 or so, maybe 245. Huff is not a 3-down defensive lineman. He is a pass rushing specialist. Same thing with Robert Beal. Lighter pass rushing specialist. Sam Okawanu, though, he's going to go over 250. He's striving at least to be a 3-down player. Move to Jalen Allen. That's a light edge rusher. He might be 240, 242, dripping wet. Went to the same college as Bryce Huff in Memphis. Similar type of player as Bryce. Jonathan Garvin, again, a little bit heavier, 3-down player. The three guys that they've added the past couple days, Trevis Gibson, Damone Harris, and William Bradley King, those are all 260 plus defensive ends. So obviously the 49ers are stocking up on the type of edge rusher who can stop the run. Like, that is in greater demand by the front office, by Chris Kasarik, by Robert Saleh, than the super light guys. You need the light speed rushers. They serve a certain purpose to pin their ears back and rush the passer, run around the hoop on third and long or second down passing situation. So Bryce Huff and Jalen Allen have spots on this football team, especially here through the offseason for Jalen Allen before they cut down to 53. But the 49ers' top priority by far is to stop the run. It has to be, given how bad they were in that phase of the game last year. That's why they got rid of Malik Collins. That's why they got rid of Javon Hargrave. That's why they got rid of Leonard Floyd. Those guys might have been fine pass rushers, but for the money that they commanded as veterans, they were below average run defenders, and that was hurting the 49ers defense too much. Stopping the run in this league takes a few things. It takes size. You got to be strong to stop the run. So it takes that size and strength. That's why they got these guys that are over 260 playing the edge now. It takes some smarts, right? I think in the NFL, the run games are so much more complicated than in college. So defending them and not getting sucked into some of the action is infinitely more difficult at the NFL level. And on top of size and smarts, it also takes a certain level of toughness and hunger. It's, if you want to talk about want to and desire on an NFL field, that is probably most apparent and encapsulated in running the football and stopping the run. You break a team's will if you could run it down their throat repeatedly and they can't stop you. Or you can muzzle an offense if you can stop their run game and then be able to pin your ears back and rush the passer, because offensive linemen across the whole league are definitely behind defensive linemen when it comes to pass blocking right now. So the key to everything is either running the football on offense or stopping the run on the other side of the ball. And that is what the 49ers roster construction has been all about over the course of this offseason. Other 49ers news today, they added another wide receiver. Did a video on this a little bit earlier. Hopefully you were able to catch it, but it is Malik Turner, who's already been with the 49ers in the past. He wore the number 17. We'll see what jersey number he puts on this time. Jordan Watkins currently has the 17, although he's not going to be practicing for about a month with the high ankle sprain. I still think they'll probably find a new number for Malik Turner, who, by the way, they really liked his gunner capabilities when he was last with the 49ers. So special teams, I mean, yes, at this point, I would say it's a camp body, but it's somebody with experience who has shown some special teams value. And given the injury situation at receiver, you cannot rule out Malik Turner going into a larger role for San Francisco. So there he is, 6'2", 200 pounds, a little bit larger frame, somebody who you, I think, really might like on special teams. Even if he can't make the 53-man roster, he can make the practice squad and then be a weekly flex for San Francisco for 2 or 3 weeks. And you cross the bridge of all these injuries at the receiver position, and then you figure out what you do next, because the roster is this living, breathing thing evolving from year to year. We have any good questions here? If we have questions, then we'll go to them. Welcome from Las Vegas. 49ers are going to face the Raiders in practice tomorrow. That's going to be a whole heck of a lot of fun. I can't wait for that. 49ers, Raiders from the facility. It's the Raiders facility in Henderson. Got to show you guys a good little something. You'll see what Las Vegas looks like. I think that this is going to encapsulate a lot of the Las Vegas experience visually as I wait for some good questions. So this right here is the hotel. It's the Fontainebleau, and it's got the automatic. That's the studio setup, by the way. You could see where I'm broadcasting from right now. And then you look out into the glorious desert of Las Vegas, and you see a massive vacant parcel right outside the Strip. mean, if that's not the most Las Vegas setup that there ever was, I don't know what is. But the Fountain Blue is really nice, and they've got the automatic curtain opener, which is really nice. You could open both layers of curtains separately too, which is good. You could tell like it's good lighting here as well. I closed the curtains, by the way, for the show. It's like a retractable roof on a stadium. It's like Arizona Stadium. But look at that big vacant lot. I mean, Vegas is wild because you could have, all this opulence on the strip, and then you just go and it's tumbleweeds like 5 steps away. And then there's a monorail. And then there's another tall building, another tall casino, and then there's a strip mall. And then, like Vegas is a different animal altogether. So this is where the joint practice is tomorrow, 49ers against the Raiders. If you guys want to do a fan meetup, let me know. That might happen on Friday, but only if we feel like it, only if you guys feel like it. So let me know how many of you are here in Vegas. But we got some time to kill in all likelihood on Friday with the 49ers practicing tomorrow. And then they're going to have a walkthrough that's closed to the media on Friday. And then they're going to play the Raiders on Saturday and it's a 1 p.m. start, which I really like. That helps. It's a lot better than a 5 p.m. start. I might try to get out of town on Saturday night, or I might try to stay here one more night. It depends on how I'm acclimating to Vegas beyond 36 hours, because that's when it starts to get to you a little bit when you're out here. But so far, so good. Have been here for about 5 hours. Have had a good time. 2 thumbs up. Ready for your questions. Keith is asking, where's a good place to eat? Well, I'll tell you what, in Vegas, there are places that don't put the prices on the menu. So I can't tell you if it's an affordable place to eat, but it could be a good place to eat. That's like a latest thing here in Vegas, is like, you're like, okay, well, I guess I'll find out how much it costs when I ask for the check. And you got to hope that you don't have to take out a loan to pay for it. Cross your fingers for some good luck. Hope that I saw a $288 steak on a menu today in Vegas. I didn't order it. And that was the one menu that actually had a price on it. So who knows how much it is when the actual price isn't listed there. So just be careful if you're on the strip. Maybe go off the strip. There's a place called In-N-Out Burger that typically has good food, and they actually do put their prices on the menu. Mike has another matchup for us to watch in 49ers Raiders practice tomorrow. Upton Stout versus Jacoby Meyers. Well, first off, let's hope that Upton Stout is good to practice again. The calf has been a little bit sore, but if he's good to practice again, 2 thumbs up. I can't wait. Yes, Upton against Jacoby Meyers. Good matchup. Probably the best matchup of 49ers secondary on a Raiders receiver. But you do have Brock Bowers, who's probably going to get some safety attention, right? Maybe, how about Marquise Seagull against Brock Bowers? That's a good one. So I lied. That's a secondary matchup. Bowers had however many catches he did last year. It was an absurd amount of catches. The one knock on Marquise Seagull, or maybe I should say the one concern about him, because he could fly. Robert Saleh was talking about how epic his speed is, his 0 to 60 is. So we know that. But the one concern about him is that he's a little smaller than you might like at the safety position. In fact, I've even got a spider chart here for Upton Stout. Let's get this one out. I tweeted this a few days, not for Upton Stout. We know Upton Stout's spider chart will look similar to Marquise Seagull's because he also is a fast yet undersized player. But I'm scrolling all the way down to try to find Seagull's, because I think that this against the big tight end, Brock Bowers, is going to be excellent theater, and it's going to be great evaluation for the 49ers. All right, I got it. We're going to get it up on the screen. I'm going to take off Mike's comment. Here it is. That's the room with the curtain. You got to take that off. Remove that. Put this on. There we go. That's what we've been looking for. So you can see here, Marquise Seagull, and this is a very, very interesting set of measurements because they're not exactly what you would see congruent together. Great vertical jump. This is against cornerbacks, by the way. This is Marquise Seagull against corners, not safeties. Compared to other corners, the vertical jump is awesome. The 40-yard dash is above average. He's the fastest safety in the draft class, though. So if you compared this to safeties, you would take this one down here and you'd put it all the way out here at the 4.37. He's got the quickness of an above-average corner, but all of a sudden, he doesn't have very good height or weight. He's not big. And compared to safeties, it'd be even worse, right? Because corners are smaller than safeties. But he's got very good arm length and very good hand size. You don't normally see the height and the weight lower and the arm length and the hand size higher, but that's what you have from Marquise Seagull. In essence, I think that you have an ideal player to flex between safety and an extra corner role that can man up against somebody near the line of scrimmage. Now, the question for me is, can he man up against Brock Bowers when Brock Bowers is running more aggressive routes downfield? Because Brock is 6'4". Brock is much taller. Marquise Seagull is 5'11". We know he's fast enough, but is he going to have, is that arm length, which is good for Marquise Seagull, is that going to be enough to bat a pass away, to get into the catching vision of somebody like Brock Bowers? We don't see measurables like this all too often. You don't see a spider chart that looks like this, that's extreme in these particular areas, yet seemingly deficient in some of these other areas. You don't see that compatible very often. So that means that Marquise Seagull's an unusual player. But we know that this unusual player has graduated to the top of the 49ers depth chart, and he's going to get a chance against the Raiders' best at practice tomorrow. So I cannot wait to watch that. Mike proposes a trade. He wants the 49ers to trade Jordan Elliott to the Raiders for Michael Mayer, the tight end. And apparently Michael Mayer was on the trade block, at least earlier this offseason. I wonder if he still is. Could be a need fulfilled for both teams. I know the 49ers were interested in Michael Mayer, Notre Dame tight end, back when he came out of the NFL draft. So I think that, if the 49ers are actually considering shopping some of these players, and I'm just trying to put the tea leaves together, I'm trying to connect the dots. If there is that serious consideration from the 49ers, you really shop these guys and you really showcase these guys at open practices like this. We've seen it before, right? Team gets the practice against the player, team gets to play against the player. Next week, they're trading for him. Guess where that most famously happened? Christian McCaffrey. 2022, 49ers playing the Carolina Panthers. They get a close look at Christian McCaffrey. They say, oh my God, this guy still has juice. We couldn't really tell from far away because the Panthers were terrible, but we saw him in person and he put that whole team on his back. And I remember he scored a touchdown against the 49ers, and John Lynch talked to Scott Fitterer, the Carolina GM, and they opened the line of communication. 3 or 4 weeks later, Christian McCaffrey, you are a 49er. So that was a superstar moving teams after somebody got a close look at him. You would think that some of these rotational players, some of these guys who aren't exactly stars, but could still have a little bit of a late round trade value, some utility to a new team, you would think that those are the guys who are really being eyed at this time of the year in practices like the one that we're going to see tomorrow. Why do I have Dwelly making the roster when he'd easily clear waivers? Well, I'm sure there's players that are going to make the roster that could clear waivers. And Dwelly is not a waiver player, by the way. Dwelly's a vested veteran, so waivers don't even apply to Ross Dwelly. He could be released. I think Dwelly is the ideal candidate for a guy that they cut on cut down day, just so they can fit an injured player onto the 53 like Kevin Givens and move that player to IR the next day, so he only misses 4 games, right? Or can be eligible to come back after 4, and then they re-sign Dwelly. You do that with vested veterans who don't have to clear waivers. So my roster, the one that I put out there, is what I think the 49ers roster is going to look like after that first day of crazy maneuvers. If you want to see it again, I'll put it up on the screen right now. So after that first day of crazy maneuvers, this is my projection. So there's going to be some confusing stuff and people are going to scratch their heads and they're like, why'd they cut this guy? It's because I guarantee you in at least one instance, probably multiple instances, they're going to re-sign that player the very next day. And again, even that will only be the 49ers initial 53-man roster. This is going to be a living, breathing thing. But the reason I've got Dwelly on it is because I think that he's their third best tight end. And I think that's what the coaching staff thinks. And I think that Braden Willis is battling it out with Jake Tonjes, both of whom would be players who have to clear waivers. But I think that both of them probably would clear waivers for the 49ers. And then you could add one to the practice squad. Maybe one does, one doesn't. And whoever doesn't could be a practice squad guy if you don't take 4 tight ends. But it's really, really important to delineate between vested veterans who don't have to clear waivers and guys still in the rookie window who are exposed to waivers at the cut down. Mike says, and this is a good point, I've been impressed with Braden Willis too. I'm not sure about these maneuvers at the tight end position. This is just a projection, and we still have 2 games to go to be more sure about this stuff. But Mike says that he saw Braden Willis in person, pretty close to him. He looks like he's gotten a lot stronger. Guess who had the block on Nick Bonito, who's an edge rusher on the touchdown for Patrick Taylor Jr.? Braden Willis. That's a big play. I thought that Braden Willis, I mean, if it's a battle for number 4, right, and Dwelly has 3, if it's a battle between Willis and Tonjes for 4, I thought Willis was a little bit better than Tonjes just in the game on Saturday. But I think that Tonjes has been getting more looks in the pass game over camp. So, you balance things. And special teams might be the ultimate determinant there. Maybe even determining if they take 3 or 4 tight ends. Vince says that Robbie Chosen has an opportunity to stick around, make some plays early, or made some plays early. Yeah, he has actually. He's in better shape than he was last year. And Kyle Shanahan has straight up said that he's got a better chance than last year to stick around. So you are correct about that. Man, you're getting way ahead of me right now. Who are the 4 players the 49ers would protect on the practice squad after the cut down to 53? I don't know. Who are people talking about Demo? He won't back down? Diamador Lenore? From what? I mean, he calls himself the hyena, so of course he won't back down. Diamador Lenore, I think people are probably having a debate in the chat section about who the toughest player is or something, but good stuff. Any suggestions for books that are a glossary of terms or advanced metrics? Well, I used to learn from footballoutsiders.com, which no longer exists. Aaron Schatz, who had the glossary on Football Outsiders, he might have moved it to ftnfantasy.com. That's where they merged with a fantasy company, and that's where they put all the stats. And I would hope that they ported the glossary over there. Those are the guys that basically invented a lot of those stats. Mike said that I should write one. I don't know, man. I don't know if I'm smart enough to write something like that. I really have to give credit to the guys like Ben Baldwin, to Aaron Schatz. I think what I'm good at is taking those stats and contextualizing them and writing about them for fans. But I didn't create the stats, and I don't consider myself to be a human glossary. I think that I'm just learning every day, and I think they're a really good way to illustrate in some more objective terms what we're seeing on the football field. This is a good one. JM617 says, I hate the Raiders, but Crosby literally was born to be one. I love how much of a Raider Max Crosby is. And I can't wait to see Max Crosby practice against the 49ers on that field tomorrow. That, to me, is worth the, I'm not paying anything for admission tomorrow, but it's worth the trip for me. It's about to say it's worth the price of admission. But I think, when you go to an actual NFL game and Max Crosby's there, he very often is worth the price of admission. The guy is just a true football player. And he's not afraid, and he's honest. He's not afraid to say that fights might happen or will happen. I think he guaranteed a fight actually against the 49ers tomorrow. And that's the Raiders. You could hate the Raiders. You could feel the way that you want about the Raiders, but you have to acknowledge that the Raiders are the Raiders. They change people. They've got a certain aura about them, right? And Max Crosby bleeds that Raiders silver and black aura. I think it's great. I think it's too bad they're not in Oakland. I think that back when the Coliseum fit the Raiders, and Allegiant Stadium is a great stadium. The Coliseum, It was a dump. Still is a dump. It's there, but it was their dump, right? It was kind of like Candlestick Park. It wasn't fancy, but it had the aura. It had the connection to the team that played in it. The Raiders had the Coliseum. The 49ers had Candlestick. And now we move on to the Allegiant and Levi's era. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. We got a big day tomorrow. 49ers, Raiders, joint practice. Practice is early, so set the alarm bell right now. Make sure that the instant reaction, we're going to try to make it the biggest one that we've had yet. So when that instant reaction hits your phone tomorrow on the notification, and if you hit the alarm bell right now, you get the notification. I want you to click on it. That's going to help boost it. YouTube will say, okay, we got to push this out to as many people as possible. So you guys can all help make tomorrow's instant reaction the biggest one we've had yet by hitting the notification bell, getting the notification tomorrow. And when you get that notification with the YouTube app, click on it, watch the reaction. It's going to come out before noon because practice is at 8:45 a.m. here in Vegas time. So let's build the hype. It's going to be fun tomorrow. Thanks for watching. 49ers have added 2 more defensive linemen. As we speak, we know of 22 linemen on their roster. They're going to have at least 20 defensive linemen heading into this practice with the Raiders. First time that's ever happened. Awesome, awesome stuff. We will talk to everybody soon.